either way, I'm not going to be rooting for the Chicago Cubs in any stretch of the imagination because they are the Milwaukee Brewers division rivals. But, kind of the same thing. I guess I did cheer or not cheer for, but wouldn't have mind seeing the New England Patriots win that Super Bowl back in 2007 and go 19-0. I wouldn't have minded that because I would have got to see some history, probably something I never see again. And just to say that you were alive, because who knows if the Cubs don't win the World Series this year, maybe there's not another chance. Maybe the curse is maybe believed to be too real. But it's a inevitable thing too that happens. We did see this with the Boston Red Sox about 12 years ago too. Plus another thing is it'll be nice to I think once you start winning, then you get put on that other pedestal. The Cubs will not be they will no longer be, I think, in the bandwagon crowd. Which they're always going to be that team to a certain extent. But I think we did see this too with the Boston Red Sox as well, where everyone was a Boston Red Sox fan when they won, when they reversed the curse. So if the Cubs do so, I think that dies down a little bit. I don't have to hear about how as a Brewer fan, I should root for the Chicago Cubs. Don't want to hear it. I'm done with it. But if it does happen, not going to complain too much. But I do want to see the Indians win. I think that'd be cool. It'd be cool for Cleveland too, winning 2 championships, and I can stop hearing about Cleveland bitching and moaning about how downtrodden their sports teams are. I mean, we know the Cleveland Browns story here, but your other teams are not too bad. College football, the Wisconsin Badgers get a win. Kind of look a little rough against the Iowa Hawkeyes. It is a divisional rivalry game. They won that game 17-9, and again, kind of put them in a spot where they did fall one place in the standings. But I'm not too worried about that too, because still to get to that point, you play number 7 Nebraska next week. They never really beat anybody, but they are where they are because they are undefeated. So they're coming. I believe it's the games in Camp Randall next weekend. Didn't really look that up yet, but I think the Badgers can win that game too. They got to perform better offensively. You got to maybe trust Hornibrook a little bit more. I'm not really sure where to go with that, or mix him in there. I don't know. It's got to stop basically got to stop fumbling, man. I mean that's probably Corey Clement not trusting his offensive line. I think we've seen that all year long. But again, get that done. And you go and beat a Nebraska team, which I think they can. And then we'll be talking about maybe them moving back up, maybe even to that 7th spot, or potentially even higher after that, even despite having the 2 losses, although that might even still put a little bit of black eye for the Badgers, especially with Ohio State getting upset by the Penn State Nittany Lions 24-21 on Saturday too. So that'll kind of put their ranking back a little bit too. But as long as Ohio State basically keeps winning, you might want to even be an Ohio State fan or a Michigan fan. And that game probably doesn't really matter because you did lose to both teams. I maybe still root for Michigan because they would end up probably being a chance of getting ranked better when those 2 teams play at the end of the year. So hopefully they win out. Ohio State loses to Michigan, or maybe they tie. That'd be an ideal situation. Wisconsin wins out. They face off in the Big Ten championship. I think we could still say this team could, especially if they play Michigan. Michigan's still ranked in the number 1 or number 2 at that point if they run the table too. And then we talk about a Wisconsin Badgers team that will only have 2 losses, and if they go there and beat Michigan, ranked at number 2, there's a good chance they end up in the top 4, and good chance that they would even be close to the top 5 yet if they win out, if they don't look too bad in a lot of these losses, that they could still have an outside shot at getting in the college playoff. Because I think, again, this team has a very good opportunity to be better than what better next year than what they are this year, but especially maybe offensively, and those guys on defense too. Once they get healthy, some of linebackers have been out. A lot of those guys are lost for the season. So if everyone comes back, I think Hornibrook too. After he gets a full year out, maybe even towards the end of the year, he looks better. Because and that's maybe why if you have Hornibrook out there, get him some development time, make sure he doesn't get lose his confidence too. Because there's still some great things that can be done this season for the Wisconsin Badgers if they can run the table, and especially win that Big Ten championship game, because they do have to also leapfrog over Ohio State too. And recover from their one loss too. So that's interesting. So now we can no longer get these even if we go to Nebraska next week, we've had these losses now where we go, well, we lost to Michigan, they were ranked 4th at the time. We lost to Ohio State, they were ranked 2nd. We can't go into these games anymore and go, well, at least we were competitive. If we go, play Nebraska, they're ranked 7th. We should beat them. They're ranked number 7 solely because they are undefeated, not because anybody who they played. It's based on because they're undefeated. And I think we're seeing a lot of parity, in college football too. Some of these teams like North Carolina being ranked 22nd right now, I don't think anyone's seen that coming. Or, Miami, when they were ranked as high as they were before North Carolina knocked them off, don't think people seen that coming either. So college football always gets more interesting and interesting each week. Hopefully we'll get Rudy on one of these times and we'll talk about it. I'm sure he does have a lot to say about that. Last thing I do want to talk about, we are going into the round of 8 into the chase for the Sprint Cup. So glad it's the last year we can call it that, because maybe the new sponsor will come in and have different influences. Maybe change the chase format. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But again, Joey Logano won to clinch his spot into the next round. Other drivers are advancing are the Busch brothers, Denny Hamlin, Carl Edwards, Matt Kenseth, Kevin Harvick, and Jimmy Johnson. Guys that were left out, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, Austin Dillon, and Chase Elliott. And I did hear that people were complaining because you do have the 2 guys with the most wins, Brad Keselowski and Martin Truex Jr., not being in the next round of the chase, still not up for the championship despite winning the most races in the season. I mean, if someone's really bitching and moaning about those 2 guys being eliminated from the championship round, or in the round of 8, what do they want? Whoever wins the most races in a season automatically wins the championship. That's basically what we're calling for. Consistency still has got to be a big part, maybe a bigger part than winning, because obviously you do win a race, you do qualify for the playoffs, even though we see that shouldn't matter. Why are we letting Chris Buescher in? But yet, you got to be consistent, and you can win to move on. They didn't win at the right spots. Martin Truex Jr., that first leg in the chase, the round of 16, he won 2 races. Congratulations. The next round, he didn't perform well enough. That's that. This format is just terrible anyway. It shouldn't even be this way. It should be the old-fashioned classic way, because your season shouldn't be your total body season of work shouldn't be taken away because of a 3-race stretch. This isn't football. We've talked about this a million times. But, Martin Truex Jr., he was terribly inconsistent all year. He won more races. He led more laps. But, man, he was up there in the standings, but he not necessarily was having a championship season. Guys like Kevin Harvick, yeah, they weren't winning the races, but they were running up front every week. And we can say it might be a travesty for Brad Keselowski, because under the old classic point standings, going into Talladega, he was only 8 points behind Kevin Harvick if they were running the classic point standings, which we know they aren't, and they race different, blah, 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 blah. But to complain because the 2 guys with the most wins don't have a shot to win the championship, what are you saying? That if you win the most races, you get a free pass? We've already had complaints that the driver that's leading the points towards the end of the season, the regular season, quote unquote, that they should get a free pass. So now we're saying that the teams that have the most wins automatically go to the championship round? That's absurd. I mean, even just winning a race to advance to the next round, I think you look at a guy like Kevin Harvick, I think most of his chase races, I can't remember where he ended up today. I know he was battling up front for the win and he got shuffled back late in the race. But besides probably today and those races that he won, I think his average finish was like 30th. And he's still contending for a championship. So that is pretty bad in that aspect. But the rules are the rules. We shouldn't change them just because a guy wins the most races during the season. Maybe we should even look at if they automatically win a race that they move on to the next round. That shouldn't necessarily be the case if you're going to keep this format. Because the winning of the race is obviously going to get you a better opportunity to move on. But if you finish 40th the first two races and then win at Talladega off of a fluke, and you could be potentially given a guy that ran in the top 10 or maybe top 5 the last 3 races, you kick him out because it won the last race at Talladega. Just a terrible idea. And I know they're trying to get the race at Talladega out of there because of weird fluky situations that can happen and totally mess up the chase picture. Because it was kind of dumb how they're talking about it all day. The guys like Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott, and Denny Hamlin had to stay up front and get those better opportunities. I mean, I agree with that strategy, don't get me wrong, but really it didn't matter because all at the end of the day, especially at Talladega, it's where you finish. You do want to put yourself in the best opportunity, but it's not like you're running at Michigan and you want to make sure you qualify up front and get that good track position. It doesn't matter that much at Talladega, but I kind of get what they were saying there too. But Talladega is too much of a wild card at the end of the day to really hold too much of your championship stakes on it, and that will change next year. But it'll be interesting. I'm hoping Jeff Gordon comes in next week. He'll be driving the number 88 Chevy for filling in for Dale Earnhardt Jr. I think for his last time, maybe ever. So hoping he can maybe spoil the party a little bit and give those non-chasers a chance to win a race here. It's kind of... I know people would complain if a non-chaser did win a race, but I think it would be a lot more interesting than what we're seeing now. And now you're getting to that point of the year, too, with the round of 8, that there's a better chance of a non-chaser to win a race. But I'd like to see that happen earlier when there's more than 8 cars in a field. So we'll see about that. But with that being said, I'm going to wrap up this week's episode of Sports Talk 920. I'd like to thank you all for listening. You can follow us all week long on Twitter at ST920 at twitter.com, on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ST920, and of course on our blog at sportstalk920.blogspot.com. And until next time, I'm Mike Goodman. Thank you all for listening to Sports Talk 920. Good day now.